Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. I hope that everybody had a great July and enjoyed some well-deserved time off and vacations and things of that nature. But welcome to another Live with Engage featuring Mr. Juan Cortes, a good friend, a good mentor of mine that I've known for many, many years. And today we're going to talk about 35 years, 3 lessons, and what I tell my younger self. This is all about things that you need to really focus on and really concentrate on as you continue to progress in your career journey. And Juan and I were just talking, and it's really about lessons learned. My name is Gary Prater. I'm the Director of Business Development for Engage Partners, and very, very happy to have Juan join us today. Juan, please do us a favor and kind of give everybody an introduction on who you are and what you're currently doing, and then we'll jump right into the interview.
Yeah, good morning, Gary. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Juan Cortes. I'm the head of IT at OPW. We're located, one of our facilities is located off of 747. I've been in IT for over 35 years. At OPW, I'm responsible for both IT, infrastructure, business systems, and digital, any solutions that are customer facing. So I've been with the organization now almost 3 years. Yeah, and I think today, it's funny, Gary, you and I talked about this a little bit. Both of our kids are now in their professional lives, right? We've got all of our kids through college and their professional lives. And so I kind of consider myself in the fourth quarter of my career. So I think this topic is really resonating as I'm talking to my son about, how he starts his professional journey. So excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, you are correct. Our boys, actually, it's been funny, Juan, because I've seen both Garen and Evan actually learn these lessons live. And, you try to guide them and you try to help them out, but they act like, we have no idea what we're talking about. So you got to kind of let them fall down a little bit, and then their ears and eyes start perking up, and then they come back to you and they start asking you really important questions on how they can be successful in the real world. And it's good to see both of them starting to flourish at this particular time, especially Ian as well, your kid. And I know that everything is going well for all of them, and I think that we had a lot to do with that. So you spent almost 35 years in your career. What made you kind of look back now and share what you learned over your career, and be able to share what you've been learning and how you've learned early on, middle career, as well as your late career, and how you're mentoring folks right now?
Yeah, it's kind of a journey, and I think for me, the last several years, I've started mentoring more folks. And so that process of just giving people your feedback, teaching them, or at least trying to create the lessons from your failures so that they can hopefully avoid them, it's really kind of been that's some of it. And then, like I said, my kids are, their careers have launched. And so thinking about, some of the things that I failed at, right, unfortunately, and trying to pass those lessons on. I think the reality, though, is failure is part of the process. And so today is not about giving anyone the magic bullet to avoid failures, but it is about getting people more understanding of things to be thinking about, and I'll try to break it up, some of the feedback in the stages of your career, right? The beginning of your career, the middle of your career, and when you're kind of at my stage, kind of towards the end of it. So hopefully this will be, something's valuable, but, happy to talk about, at least what I've done and what I feel are important things. And, we can definitely go from there.
Most definitely. And I want to send a shout out to Tracy and the staff over at the circuit. I know that you're very heavily involved with the circuit, and you do a lot of leadership training and mentoring there. And I'm also going to send a shout out to Phil and all of the folks at Cincy Deliver. We actually attended their event last week and are a diamond sponsor. And some of the lessons that I've learned over the years, I'm able to incorporate in just day-to-day conversations of meeting new people and things of that nature. And I want to say thank you to you, because over the years, we started to just kind of help each other. We have these great conversations, and it's just good that I'm able to take information from you, put it into my toolbox, and be able to use it. And hopefully, some things that I tell you, you use and put them in your toolbox as well. It's
Yeah.
funny. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then Gary, that's really the first point. So kind of jumping into it, the first point is really about networking and relationship building. I did not take it seriously early in my career. By the time you and I connected, I was kind of halfway through my career. But I would encourage everyone, it doesn't matter where you're at, what stage you're at, really about developing professional networks and creating relationships. For the folks that are early in their careers, getting to know your teammates, getting to know the teams that are, connected to your teams. So if you're a developer, getting to know the project management team, getting to know the infrastructure team, getting to know your end customers, right? Who is using what you're creating? There are too many times, particularly where we kind of get so focused at the beginning of our careers of just understanding who we are, that we don't make those connections. And those connections are really important, because not only are you, getting feedback and getting to learn from others, because learning the business is a very important part. Everybody, regardless of what career path they're on, you should know what your company does. You should have a good understanding of what your contribution is to that. And by getting to know people adjacent to your roles, getting to know your end customers, you start being able to develop that understanding, right? Because without that, you're probably going to miss, opportunities that could help you advance your career, right? And the last thing I think anybody wants to be kind of labeled as is a siloed player that doesn't connect well with others. I think the other thing that's important about that, and particularly in some of the challenges we're having today socially, is people are lonely. People get, there's this epidemic of loneliness. So starting to connect with others at work is a safe way to start making personal connections, right? You have a lot of common things. It's not like you're meeting somebody new. And so that's the other reason I would tell you, if you're not taking networking and creating relationships as a part of your career, I would really encourage you doing it, because I think it has a lot of benefits.
Yeah, definitely, Juan. I attended a couple sessions down at Cincy AI Week, and one of the sessions really talked about not just human in the loop, but how what you just described. People are working from home. They're kind of looking at screens, and there's a lack of that human interaction and that human element that kind of goes into building these long-term mutually beneficial relationships. And she just talked about the reality of the human connection, and how you just want to make sure that you continue to focus on that and things of that nature. So it's really great to hear you say that. You've described early on in your career that you kind of would wait for your boss to initiate every conversation. And you kind of mentioned that was kind of a trap that somebody could fall into. What should somebody do in their first 5 years or so to take a different path on that? What kind of advice would you share with them?
Yeah, it is really about just taking the step, right? My background, I was in the military, as right out of high school. And so the mentality in the military is like, the superior is kind of responsible for the relationship. But in the real world, that's not the case, right? Both parties are. So what I didn't do early in my career was I didn't take the initiative to set up join ups, right? 30-minute connects, once a month, maybe once a quarter for somebody that's a little further away from your circle of influence. I had this assumption that if they wanted to talk to me, they would set up the meeting. Now, being in a senior role, being responsible for a lot of things, what I realize is, yes, I would love to have conversations with a lot of people, but I'm just distracted, right? I have a lot of things coming at me. I'm not always going to be thoughtful about setting up a recurring meeting. And so taking the initiative and you setting up the meetings, and you can start with just one, and it's just an introduction. Hey, I'm just trying to get a better, I'm trying to expand my personal or professional network, trying to better understand, how my role fits in the organization. Just start there, but don't wait for them to engage you, because the reality is people aren't thinking in that way. They're kind of focused with the work. And so I think, now that I'm a lot older, I am very purposeful about connecting with others. But what I also find is when people reach out to me and want to connect with me, I welcome it, right? It's like, yeah, cool. Let me have, a few minutes out of my day where I'm not problem solving and I'm just having a genuine conversation with somebody else. So it benefits both folks. So that's why I tell you, take the initiative. Very rarely will anybody get upset. And if they do, then just recognize maybe that's not a good person and find someone else.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, can you kind of maybe provide an example, like a real live example, Juan, when you were a little bit younger, where you actually took that initiative and you were like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and put myself out there and do this?
Yeah. So I have a great story from when I was at Kroger. I was a project manager on a data center expansion initiative, and the team had done a lot of analytics about how our data center footprint was growing, our power utilization, heat, and what we discovered was, hey, we're growing faster than we anticipated before that project was initiated. And as you can imagine, those kinds of heavy capital projects, it takes some time to get approved. And so I had this moment of panic because I'm like, oh my God, there's a problem here. And so I was struggling with, what do I do? And I felt pretty confident that sending an email was not going to do this, be the right thing. So I talked to my mentor at that time, was my father-in-law. He was kind of the key person in my life at that point. And he's like, you need to call the CTO who ultimately owns this, and you just need to have a meeting with him, and you guys to kind of walk him through and explain what's going on. And at that time, that's probably 5-6 levels above me, right? That's a pretty big discussion. And I remember I set up the meeting, and then I drove downtown, and I literally had an anxiety attack inside the car, because I'm like, man, I thought I was going to walk in and get fired, right? I mean, that's what I thought. And that's a little bit of where the demons in our head sometimes take over, logic. The meeting went really well. Jim Scott, who was the CTO at that time, he was really thankful that I saw a problem and I raised it, and I gave him the ability to get ahead of it, right? Because we were still doing the project. This situation was a few years out, but we made him aware of it, and then we were able to proactively in the next year figure out a greater strategy. And it was an example of me taking a risk and connecting with someone. What's ironic is Jim became a mentor of mine. We ended up having a wonderful relationship, and he's still a mentor of mine. I still talk to him to this day, even though we're both long gone from Kroger. But it's an example of just taking the moment to connect with someone at a personal level versus doing traditional data exchange over a electronic medium. Is just more meaningful.
Definitely. Oh, it's funny that you mentioned Mr. Jim Scott, because I know that when I was working with you and a lot of folks at Kroger, that Jim was a catalyst there. And I remember me being a little green at the time, but he always kind of would put his arm around me and kind of tell me, you need to go talk to this person or that person, and I'll make sure that you get that introduction. And then I know that he went on to do a lot of work with UC and did a lot of leadership mentoring, and really worked very, very hard in their IT department with their students and all kinds of stuff like that. So, I was having a meeting yesterday with another leader within an organization, and we were talking about, do you live to work or do you work to live? Are you productive? Are you busy? Which one is which? And he said, I could sit in my office all day. He said, but I like being out on the floor with all of the different people, because the exchange of the information is what's really important when it's live and when you're together. And that helps you stay out in front of different issues and or problems that may be coming up. And, I've been lucky over the years to have many, many people in my life to actually give me advice on how to represent myself as business development professional. And it's funny that you mentioned Jim, because he was definitely one of them.
Yeah, and I think that's the beautiful part. If you start early in your career creating these connections, is that they really they're a place for you to get a lot of feedback. They're a place for you to really grow. And again, like I said, I was halfway through my career when I found the value of this. And the circuit was where I went for the first time to create a professional network outside of my job. So the recommendation is both inside of your role, particularly when you're early in your career, and then as you progress, start creating those connections in the professional community. And like in Cincinnati, particularly, we are a very close IT community. People love living here. They stay here a long time. And so creating those connections early on will pay dividends all the way through your career. So yeah, it is. I tell people, it's scary, but just taking that step, you'll be amazed on the return of investment. It really is important.
Fantastic. Let's move on now to mid-career, right? Now, we start out early, then we get a little bit more seasoned, and we're starting to learn, and we're actually putting into practice some of the stuff that we've learned early on. So, you talked about the power of relationships, right? And you and I have one, and I have one with many, many people that have been sustainable over many, many years. And it's about building trust, earning their respect, and things of that nature. At what point did it hit you like, you know what, I need to make sure that I continue to do this. This is not a side activity. This is a focal point for me and me progressing in the right areas.
Yeah, it's a great question. So for me, it was when I had, on my own initiative, abilities, those types of things, gotten to a position of a manager position, right? And generally, up to that point is your capabilities to deliver, very project oriented, very, tactical, transactional functions. When I started trying to move from a manager to senior manager to, hopefully director, I realized that I had to pivot, that it just wasn't about creating outputs that aligned to the business. It was also about creating relationships. And those relationships really helped when I was trying to progress. So I think the second point for me is, leadership development, career advancement, and kind of understanding that. If you don't have a good relationship with your boss, and if you don't have a good relationship with the peers of your boss and your customers, when you start progressing beyond management level, moving up, there's a real need to have those relationships, because the decisions to promote people aren't done in a vacuum. They're done by committee, right? And the person who's making that decision to promote someone, they're putting some personal, there's personal risk for someone promoting someone else, right? Because you're saying that this person's ready, and their actions not only reflect on themselves, but they reflect on you. Mm-hmm. And so having a good relationship with the broader spectrum of folks that you're serving, or the folks that you're working with, will be important, because if they all see what you're doing and they understand you as a person, there's a bit of trust. I think the second thing that you have to be thoughtful about in career progression is understanding the dynamics around how the promotion works. And I was actually coaching about this just a couple of weeks ago. Every organization has a different way of promotions. Some organizations are locked into their budgets. Some organizations have particular cycles where they're doing succession planning and promotions. Other organizations may have a certain number of roles. So, I was at a Fortune 500 company where there's only so many VP positions in a particular department.
Oh, what happened? I lost it.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I got a little blip there. So, you need to understand how those dynamics work, because every organization is a little different, their promotion process. And by having that network, you can have those conversations that are a little uncomfortable, right? Questions like, what do I have to do, or what characteristics do I have to get to the next level? So I think the reason I started with the networking is so important is that you'll see is with the next, this topic and the next one, it's a foundation that allows you to do these other things. So understanding the process. The other thing I talk to folks about mid-career is you should be doing the work before you get the promotion.
Right.
Very rarely will somebody give you a promotion that they don't think you can do, right? It's
Right.
bad for them and bad for you. And so what I would encourage people to think about in mid-career is, if you have a direction you want to go, you should be trying to do the work now to prove to your management that you deserve the promotion. And part of that is asking the question, well, what kinds of responsibilities does the next level have? And then you use your internal network to get some feedback. Hey guys, I need to be able to do this to get to the next level. Am I doing that well? Do you see any holes? That's the value of that relationship that you're building, is you have a place where you can go to get context, because many of us see ourselves in a very positive light, right? We know what we're doing and we know why we're doing it. Everyone outside of that doesn't have the benefit of the context that we have in our minds, right? And so they're looking at you through their eyes. And so seeking to understand what it is to where you want to go, and then getting some balanced feedback to help you really understand where you're at, is really important. I think the other lesson that I would tell folks is avoid ultimatums. If you feel strongly that you're in a place where you should be being promoted, you need to be thoughtful about that approach, because ultimatums, although sometimes they work, they create a lot of ripples in a relationship. And I will tell you, ultimately, they don't work out in your favor. So having a collaborative discussion about progression, understanding the dynamics of each organization's, and then getting feedback from your peers to make sure that where you think you are is aligned to what they're seeing, I think goes a long way of helping you, particularly in the middle of your career where you're really trying to advance, right? You should by this point know where you want to go, and now you're really trying to make moves to get there.
Exactly. Good stuff. I know that that could be intimidating. And sometimes we get a little stubborn and we feel like we're pounding our chest and we feel like we deserve a pat on the back for all kinds of different stuff. But you're right. People see you in a different light. They see how you act. It's like, what is that saying? What are you doing when nobody's really looking? Right? You know what I mean? And all kinds of different stuff like that. So, I always operate under a trust, care, and commitment type of mentality. Like, I want you to be able to trust me. I want you to know that I care about you and that I hope that you care about me. And then I'm committed to your success, and hopefully you're committed to mine. And so that's something, as you know, from early on in my coaching careers that I learned, and something that I tried to pass down to all of the kids that we were coaching back when they were in grade school, all the way up to middle school. And now a lot of them are in college and doing their thing. And I think, telling them that yes, sir, and no, sir, yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, go a long way. And just feedback is a gift. Right. So,
yeah, it is. And I think, some of these conversations can be very intimidating with your direct manager. So having people that are peers of your manager, where you can have maybe the initial conversation with them that gets you grounded, is really important. So that's why you need to expand your network beyond your immediate team, laterally and across, because it gives you a place to have some of these conversations first with somebody that doesn't report, there's not a direct line. And it gives you a place to kind of work through how you're going to say it, right? Because, if you deliver something poorly, it has an effect. And so this is, I think the other thing is, be thoughtful about how you're engaging these conversations. Start from a place of seeking to understand, not in place of, I feel like I'm being undervalued, or you feel like you're taking advantage of me. I said, because that's, you at least start with a place of common, information sharing versus creating a place of defensiveness, right?
Yes, sir. Great advice. Now we have about 5 or so minutes many minutes left. So let's move on to late career and mentorship.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you are
So
now actually actively mentoring people. The last time that we got together and we sat down and we talked, you were telling me a story about a young person in your organization that you have these meetings with, and that you are currently mentoring him and giving him advice and things of that nature. What do you see? What do you see folks that you're working with right now? Um, where are they making mistakes? How are you coaching them through those mistakes? And, and how are you helping them grow, basically?
yeah, I think, there's a quote Vince Lombardi has about, leaders are made, they aren't born. And I think as you get from your mid of your career to the latter part of your career, you need to take leadership development, particularly for yourself and for your teams, seriously. You need to read books about leadership. The circuit has an excellent leadership development program, 10-month program that I was lucky enough to take when they first offered it. But you really need to understand that, because there are like three leadership styles, approaches. Transactional, which a lot of us do early in our career, get stuff done. Transformational, as you're moving into the middle of your career and as you're moving up, is convincing people vision and where we're going, right? And getting them to see why we're making change, right? And then the last one is relational, the ability to connect with others and convince them that what you are saying makes sense. And the relational part is the part that, for me, I struggled with. I just assumed that if I had the title, when I was in the middle of my career, and if I had the delivery, the work efforts, that you would just naturally trust me. But that's not the case. We're human beings, and we have to create a relationship with someone before we give them trust. And so I think the big thing for, as you're moving from management into executives, is making sure that you clearly understand that there are three types of leadership styles you have to have. And the higher you go, the relational one becomes far more important. Um, and it's funny, because I know this, and I've known this because I've taken a lot of training classes over the years, but you still fall into you can fall into a blind spot. And so, like, for me, I have a relationship with a senior executive that I really didn't, when I moved into OPW, I didn't focus enough attention on. And it became apparent after some leadership changes that, hey, him and I needed to work closer together. And I have been working really hard the last couple of months to reinforce that relationship, right? And so I'm setting up meetings with them. I'm trying to create a personal relationship, so that when we talk about work and we talk about where I see things going and where he sees things going, there's a level of trust there. And so, yeah, it's particularly at this point, I have to be not just a good deliverer of work, not just a good strategic, person, but I also have to be someone that can connect well with others and convey ideas and get them to come along on the journey, because naturally not everyone just accepts what you say. And so really learning about the different styles of leadership, really developing that understanding, helps you succeed, because more and more as you go higher in an organization, the expectation is you know it. No one's going to stop and say, hey man, you don't have a really good relationship. It's just, there's just expectations, you have that. And so what I would encourage people is take leadership development, not only for yourself, but for your teams, because that's what I'm doing now. I'm spending a lot more time helping my teams get to their next level. But I have to be able to explain it in an intelligent manner so that they can consume it. So yeah, so my advice, is really about taking leadership development seriously and looking at it from all angles, because the higher you go, you can't get away with just being transactional and transformational. You have to have the ability to be relational.
Fantastic, fantastic. If you could send one sentence back, or share something back to yourself at the early stage, middle stage, and late stage of your career, like what would that advice be?
Yeah, like I said, early, take relationship building seriously, right? middle of my career, seek to understand before you try to advance, right? I didn't do it, and in some cases, I burned bridges unintentionally. And then, as you're moving from your middle to your latter part, at this point, you're probably progressing, to far more responsibilities. You're getting into more meetings where it's your ability to connect with people than the content of what you're talking to them about. And spending time creating those relationships go a long way of helping people make the transitions. And I have a lot of my customers that say, I trust you, Juan. And so therefore, when you call me and suggest something, I listen. And you won't get that unless you've created a relationship. And so, yeah, so those are the three things that I think, and the good news is I failed on my journey, but I've also learned those lessons, and I feel like I'm in a good place.
Excellent, excellent. For everybody out there listening, we hope that this is very, very valuable to you. I know it's valuable to me. Juan, what is one thing that somebody should do this week to start taking action in the right way, no matter where they are at in their career? What's a good
Yeah,
piece
I
of
would
advice?
do an inventory of your network. Who do you meet with regularly? Do you have mentors? Who are they? Where are they? And if your network is solely at your job, how do you expand it, right? The circuit's a great place. There are other places to do that. And just, yeah, take an inventory, because that is such a powerful tool that many of us just do not take seriously. And that's what I would tell people: start there, because I think if you do that, it will have a huge effect across your career.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to go ahead and let you get back to leading your organization. And I really want to thank you for carving time out to prepare with us to deliver this message to this audience out there. We will be posting this out on LinkedIn and also YouTube and a couple other channels. If you didn't get a chance to watch it today, you'll be able to watch it and listen to it in another way. But man, I can't thank you enough for doing this with us. And I'll see you again soon. We'll sit down and talk about it. We'll have a debrief and figure out if we did well or not. So
Sounds great. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Gary.
you're more than welcome. All right.